So I was kind of in between doing things. I had just gotten done porting over some old decks from Magic the Gathering Arena, and then and I was in between things after doing that, and my default is just telling a bitch they're wrong, so I decided to come do this.
An atheist can go to...
I'm continuing this video from last time. If you have not seen the previous video on this video, it should be the last one I did in the playlist. Or maybe I did CC's stupid drone video since then. I don't know. But, part one of this is already uploaded. It's been uploaded for days. I think it may have gotten fucked up in uploading, but I hope not.
Two general directions with that argument. Maybe there are other directions. This is all based on what I've encountered from atheists. It seems to me that an atheist will generally go two directions with that argument.
Where does a guy get a right to say what a woman is? Women only know what women are.
Fuck off.
Thus, God exists. Now, I think that's a compelling argument, personally. An atheist can go two general directions with...
Did you fucking rewind the goddamn video? What the hell?
That argument. Maybe there are other directions. This is all based on what I've encountered from atheists. It seems to me that an atheist will generally go two directions with that argument. He can argue that objective morality does not exist.
It does not.
Morality is subjective, it's relative. So that's moral relativism, of course. Or he can argue that objective morality does exist, but it has some other source that isn't God.
Okay. So, I kind of use a in-between of these two arguments. Technically, objective morality does not exist. But we can look at what may be considered to be objective morality by looking at why morality evolved as a trait. And obviously the objective morality would be whatever fits the main goal of, like, whatever solves the main aim of morality existing. But I want to remind you all, and tell you if you haven't seen the first part of this video, this dude, literally his only two arguments here were literally the same thing, and it was God exists because this thing can't exist without God existing, without any evidence. He essentially said God exists because God exists. Both of his arguments were circular arguments. Secondly, as far as memory serves, he never even said anything about morality. He just said objective morality exists because God exists, and therefore God exists. He never explained what objective morality was. He never explained why it exists. Like, he never explained anything. He just said it exists because God, and that's why God exists.
Now, here's the interesting thing I've noticed. It seems that modern atheists and secular people are not as likely to be avowed relativists, that is, explicit, pronounced moral relativists. That seems to be kind of not as fashionable among atheists and secular people as it used to be. It's not.
Okay, so the concept of morality is a philosophical argument. It it is entirely philosophical. Now, there are aspects of it, like I mentioned, that it evolved as a trait among certain animals. But the issue here is that morals being good and bad is not a scientific argument, it's a philosophical one. And atheists who are pronounced atheists, who are not agnostic, who specifically say that God does not exist, people like that tend to be more swayed by scientific evidence. They tend to be more on top of scientific evidence than philosophical arguments. And that's because the question, does God exist, kind of hinges upon having scientific evidence. So the people who are going to be very verbose about not believing in God are going to be more focused on the scientific side of it. And you're not going to see many people who have a very philosophical mindset, because it's a rare trait to have. It's very rare to find somebody who is very into the philosophical stuff. I am one of those people. One of my absolute favorite books is Siddhartha. I was forced to read, obviously I was forced to read classical literature in high school, but one of my favorite teachers actually suggested that I read it because he thought I'd really like it, and he was right. I really, really enjoyed reading Siddhartha. But, you know, I realize I've gone way off track with this.
It's not like it was in the 19th century. What is more common now, what's most common, I think, is a kind of secular objective morality that often expresses itself as a half-baked relativism. It's very confused. You know, so the average person in our culture is very fond of saying things like, this is my truth, or don't impose your morality on me, your morality.
That's because it's entirely subjective.
About morality as if it's a thing that you can own and you have your very own version of it. Or they'll say, just do what makes you happy, you know, those kinds of things. And they'll say this especially when their own actions are challenged, or when something that they personally find acceptable is criticized. But often, these very same people will condemn things like racism, rape, slavery, pollution.
Yes, because humans on this planet are kind of in a... They're kind of in a in-between between evolutionary morality, what would be considered good just based on instincts. People are trying to grapple with the fact that certain things that would be acceptable based on instinct would actually be harmful to society. Because the base instinct of humans is us versus them. That is the base instinct. And humans are kind of grappling with the fact that the us is starting to encompass everyone on the planet, practically. So humans are trying to grapple with the fact that there is no them to other anymore. And it is a big issue. It really is. Because humans are fighting their very nature in today's world. They're fighting their very nature because, again, human nature is us versus them, but now the us is encompassing all of the thems, and there are no thems to be mad at anymore. And that ultimately is going to cause strife between people who have different ideas of who the them are in the same us group. And it is a very big issue. I do not think he's going to say anything helpful on the matter, but I wanna make clear, I do not have a solution for this. I think that the encompassing everyone on the planet, and the planet, as well as all the species on the planet, encompassing all of that as us, I think that is a good thing. But the main issue here is we don't have a them to other. And at the end of the day, that's gonna have to be something extraterrestrial if it exists. Either we need to have a them to use as an outlet, or we need to completely deconstruct our base instincts of us versus them. And both of those things are nigh impossible.
And do so by appealing very forcefully to some objective standard, condemning the wrongdoer for breaking some kind of moral code that apparently we're...
Once again, people disagreeing on who the them is. That's all that is.
all supposed to abide by. So in practice, I would say the average secular person is...
Oh my god, this guy has so many fucking ads in his video.
Really neither a moral absolutist nor a relativist, but kind of a mix, which by definition makes him a relativist. Yet few people seem to want to embrace moral relativism the way that Richard Dawkins does. Dawkins, who famously said that a bit of, quote, mild pedophilia isn't so bad if it happened a long time ago, because the moral stand...
Okay, I would like to remind this guy of which side he's standing on and just how many of those incidents were caused by people on his side. I wanna remind you that that is an issue in every society. I need you guys to remember that the sheer amount... There is a reason why there is an active running joke of priests touching little Timmies. Because it is such an insanely pervasive issue. Remember that before you start throwing stones. Because you, sir, very, very literally live in a glass house in this case.
Standards were different back then. Which is a consistent, morally relativistic position to hold, even though it's also horrifying.
Okay, so this is something that, like, this is something that shouldn't be solved by morality, but should be solved by objective laws. And this is also why laws should not be based on morality either. They should be based on what is objectively good for the population. Okay? This is a very big thing that I talk about regularly. And this is also why I push unendingly for secularism, the separation of church and government. Because churches run on emotion. They run on subjectiveness. While a government should run on objective laws, objective systems. Once the government becomes subjective, once the government becomes subjective, anyone who is not in power is at dire risk.
Most secular people, it seems, don't go that far. They try to maintain the appearances, at least, of an objective morality, even if they abandon the objective.
If people actually do that, you're a fucking coward. You're a fucking coward. You need to actually understand your own personal morals, and you need to use those as your center point. You can't just go around calling the morals everybody agrees on objective morals, because not everyone agrees with them. You need to have your own personal morals. You need to use those as your ground to build your entire being on. Anyone who hides behind a shield of objective morality and hides behind it, you are dead to me. You need to have your own morals personally ingrained into you, and you need to use that as your focal point.
That argument whenever it suits them to abandon it. Now, when an atheist, and I keep saying atheist or secular person, by the way, so understand that I mean avowed atheists, as well as the average person in society who isn't necessarily settled on the God question, but lives and operates as if there isn't a God, so it's kind of a de facto atheist. I'm calling them all atheists.
That's just agnostic, dude. You can just say agnostic.
Atheist for the sake of this discussion. So anyway, when an atheist tries to argue for objective morality, it seems the argument hinges almost always on utilitarian grounds. That's almost always what it seems to come down to. Now, there is another theory. There's kind of a Platonic theory of morality as an objective thing that exists in the abstract, just kind of floating out there in the ether. And I think that theory is basically unintelligible, so I'm not going to focus on it. Then a third option, of course, is the Darwinian idea of morality as a product of evolution.
Here we go.
Humans evolved a moral sense because it helps us live together as people.
No. That's not why morality evolved. Morality evolved because humans on their own couldn't do much. So what we did is we started living in groups, doing things in groups. And as such, many aspects of society were created. And morality was just an evolutionary tool to help us distinguish between us and them. That is all it was. That's all it was. It was an evolutionary tool to help us distinguish safe from danger. That's all it was. Back in the very early days of not even society, just hunter-gatherers living in a nomadic village, right? It was to help us distinguish who was friend from who was foe. Because outsiders can be dangerous. That's also where the roots of racism come in. If you don't look like us, how can we know you're safe? And nowadays we understand that is, like, it's an issue, because we live in a very much so blended world. People who look different are scattered around the streets. Like, nobody looks the same anymore. And that is why these older evolutionary functions are so heavily detrimental now, and that includes morality. Morality needs to turn from a thing that is instinctual to a thing that is based on facts and based on evidence, as our society turns from instinctual to based on facts as well. Things based on instincts were a lot more helpful back when we didn't have such immense science built up. But now that we have science and culture and all of these great things, the things that were once helpful are now incredibly unhelpful and cumbersome.
In a cohesive society. But this is still moral relativism. It's not really objective morality. Because in this view, morality is no more significant than opposable thumbs. It's just a thing that developed biologically to make our lives easier. So we have opposable thumbs, and opposable thumbs are helpful, but nobody would say that we have some kind of obligation to use our thumbs. Nobody would.
Okay. I don't like that this guy is, comparing morals to opposable thumbs, because opposable thumbs are still useful for us. We use them in our daily lives. I would more readily compare morality to the appendix. It's something that used to be really helpful. But now it's helpful in a different way, but also it can rupture at any moment and be life-threatening. Morality can be useful in the modern day, but it is just as likely, or maybe even more likely, to be directly detrimental.
Would say that. They say you have your thumbs, it's great, you have them. Nobody says you must use your thumbs. You have to use them. Yet morality is all about obligation. It's all about ought. You know, you ought to do such and such, you ought not do such and such. That's what morality is all about. So an evolved morality might partly explain how we got to this point without completely annihilating ourselves, only partially annihilating ourselves. But it doesn't explain why in the world I should actually act according to it now.
I'll be home for Christmas.
This guy has a damn ad in his video every 2 minutes. Yeah, I'm gonna end this video here. I'm sick and tired of watching his splattered all over his video ads. I'm sick and tired of it. I've watched like 4 fucking ads in the fucking process of watching 6 minutes of his video. Alright. I've said my piece on this. He really hasn't explained why or how objective morality is here because of God. He hasn't explained how objective morality exists. He hasn't even explained why objective morality is good. And, like, we're almost fucking we're 2/3 into this video, and all he's talked about is vague arguments from the other side. That's all he's done. I figured I'd give it another shot because, like, well, I had only watched 5 minutes, but, like, this dude hasn't said anything in 10 minutes and 44 seconds. So, I'm just gonna end this video here. I saw my analytics. Let me pull it up. I got 6 returning viewers. I'm honestly not quite sure if this number is 6 returning viewers or 6 returning views. I'm honestly not sure. But if you keep coming back, 100% you should subscribe. It gives me the motivation to do more of these videos. It really does. It's hard to find motivation to do these videos when YouTube often doesn't show my stuff to people. But I saw, because I had the returning viewers and my impressions shot through the roof. I was really happy about that. So 100%, you guys should subscribe if you keep coming back. It helps my stuff get to more people, more and more people. See these, all of these, and then audience got 58 unique views. So yeah, absolutely. Subscribe if you keep coming back. Oh, whoops, that's not what I want. I love my Ichigo wallpaper. Anyways, bye.